Thank you for these. You know, sometimes I come in here and I feel so horrible at the things I say, and then I see online people on Twitter geeking out over loose llamas or a dress that actually never changes colors, and I think I'm actually doing the Lord's work. Let's begin. Up first, the Cleveland Browns, who actually have a new helmet. Now, before we get to that, real quickly, just a little footnote, you may not know this, the Cleveland Browns are actually the only NFL team that are named after feces. And you can see it in their new helmet, which went from like a dark orange to like a more orangey. Everything about the Cleveland Browns just screams feces. Everything about them is part of that fecal matter tradition that they have really carried through until 2015. I think they should just change their name to the Cleveland Steamers and just get it over with. Up next, a topic near and dear to my heart, this is how I pay my mortgage. Ronda Rousey just retained her UFC Women's Bantamweight title. Rousey has not even spent in her entire UFC career total, not even 25 minutes, beating Kat Zingano to retain her title at just 14 seconds. She is just absolutely collecting arms and doing things that are incredible for the sport, that are incredible for athletics, certainly men and women. She's just a phenom worthy of all her success, but damn, she is violent. I haven't seen women this systemically mistreated since Boko Haram refused to bring our girls back. So February was Black History Month. I live in Washington, D.C. Let me just say I'm a fan of the Wizards organization. I'm a fan of the team, hashtag DC Rising. It's all that, it's all good. So here's a picture of John Wall, leads the league in assists, or did for a time anyway. And here is Marcin Gortat with John Wall. What they did was, for a promotional campaign to celebrate Black History Month, okay, it's a good idea, they didn't necessarily execute it all that well. They put a picture of a civil rights leader next to the face of maybe someone in the organization. The one that really caught my attention was when they put a picture of the face of their goofball Muppet-looking mascot, Gee Whiz, next to Benjamin Davis, member of the Tuskegee Airmen, the first African-American general in the Air Force. At first I was like, this is not the best idea, but then I thought maybe, you know, who better to speak about, I don't know, issues like PTSD than, say, the Hamburglar. All right, so look, I love the Wiz, I root for him, but let me just say as a general rule for everybody, if you're thinking about comparing yourself to Martin Luther King, don't. Rashid Suleiman and Duke are in the news. As it turns out, Mr. Suleiman, who was dismissed from the team previously, turns out that there were not one, two alleged sexual assaults committed by Mr. Suleiman to two different students that were allegedly reported to the Duke coaching staff, and allegedly the Duke coaching staff didn't follow through like they were supposed to, and for the most part, allegedly ignored it. Now see, this is really instructive because we don't hate Duke because they're good at basketball. We hate Duke because you're f***ing evil. And your coach looks like the doll from Saw. Charles Barkley is back in the news. Oh, you gotta love Charles Barkley. Coming out against analytics, coming out against numbers. You know what I love about Charles Barkley? I think he's the first person in the history of the human race to be a truther when it comes to numbers. Charles Barkley going out of his way to tell us analytics don't work, numbers don't work. Yeah, when you f***ing use them, maybe in the hands of Stephen Hawking, they might actually have some value. You know, actually in defense of Charles, I can think of a single scenario where number counting isn't important. It's the scenario where we're trying to figure out how many NBA championships Charles Barkley won during his pro career. Thanks, Charles. A bit of sad news, I guess depending on your perspective. Leonard Nimoy, also known as Spock, Leonard Nimoy passed away this past week, and there was plenty of grieving, and certainly as a man, to Leonard Nimoy, I say rest in peace. But to Spock, you. Let's just call it what it is. Spock is a f***ing nerd, but the difference is Spock was real logical. You couldn't really tease Spock. It wouldn't do shit to him. And if you wanted to knuckle up with him, old Spock would have you on the ground like that. Unfortunately, for the legion of nerds that Spock inspired, well, it didn't go so well for them in high school, now did it? Spock is responsible for the teasing that so many nerds had to endure at the hands of Charles Barkley-esque types and their number-hating friends. So, thanks to Spock for spawning a generation of mathletes who never got laid, who got stuffed in lockers, who got thrown in garbage cans, or as I like to call it, the golden age of bullying. And for the record, I always thought Worf was way cooler. And last, but certainly not least, a topic for a little more development, Marshawn Lynch and Kevin Durant. Now, in the last couple of weeks, both of these athletes have come out against the media in their own particular ways, but more recently, Marshawn Lynch was in Turkey and admitted on a Turkish television station that yes, in fact, at the last Super Bowl when Russell Wilson threw an interception, he was expecting the ball. Now, when he said this, Lynch did not catch a communicable disease. He was not sentenced to prison. In fact, it seemed to go quite very easily for him, to which I would respond with, you see, Marshawn, it's not that hard. Now look, I'm not trying to rehash an old debate where everyone has different issues about what Lynch did and what about Durant said, but we do need to have a bit of a moment here where we remind ourselves, media, if athletes don't like you, that's okay. And I'm not saying that they don't have criticisms to make. They do. But we don't need to treat every criticism they make like it's the most sweeping, important thing that's ever been said about sports media in the history of, I don't know, sports media. Look, I get it. I know why you like these guys. They're bright, they're kind of awesome, they're really good at sports, and they seem like nice guys. But that's why you take their side. It's not because they're winning the actual debate about sports media. You just like them better. And yes, as I said before, sometimes they have a point. Sometimes they are mistreated. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes people write things about them that are responsible, but maybe unflattering. And I'm sorry if you really think that they're just going to accept it. Well, it was done in a responsible way, so we give that the seal of approval. You're f***ing kidding yourself. It's really about the media. You always hear people say, oh, look at what this dumbass old person who's gonna be dead in 10 years anyway wrote about Marshawn. Isn't this stupid? See, this is why Marshawn hates the media. No, motherfucker, that's why you hate the media. Look, Marshawn and Kevin are, by all accounts, pretty awesome dudes, and they're fun to watch. You should celebrate them, but they're not media ombudsmen. And they're not a vehicle for you to lash out at whatever else you think is wrong with the media. Whenever we talk about athletes not liking the media, it's okay to say that they don't like the media. It's not okay to use them to make your own passive-aggressive arguments about them. Look, Marshawn Lynch and Kevin Durant seem like pretty awesome dudes. They're rich, they're successful, they're right to be celebrated, but they're not Jay Rosen. Can we stop pretending that they are? Thank you.